anyway, it was on Wednesday, and earlier that morning a tornado came through in another town about 10 to 12 miles from here, and so I got up that morning and heard it went through, and so I got my chainsaw and just got my 16-foot trailer and was going to see who I could help, and I stopped at a couple places, and there was a guy up there, an elderly guy. Anyway, he had a big tree on his house, and so I spent most of the day cutting this big hickory tree, so I was helping him cut that off, and I got home about 5 o'clock that evening, and the power was off. I don't know if y'all heard the story, but the tornado that came through that morning hit one of the power plants, and so most of the power on Sand Mountain was off. And so when I came home, around that first curve that y'all came to, and that was a neighbor of ours that just recently moved there. Not many people knew her, but my son Elijah mowed her grass a couple of weeks or a week and a half before. So I stopped, said, hey, she's getting a little money that she pays him, and so I asked her, I said, how's the weather? You know, because rumor has it that it was going to get bad again, and she said, nah, I think the worst is over. So we came home, spent a little time with the family, and then just something kept leading me to go charge my cell phone, and so I went to my truck and was listening to the weather, and the weather lady came on and said, hey, there's a tornado coming out of Marshall County, headed to Rainsville, Sylvania somewhere, picking up steam, not coming off the ground, you know. So at that point, you know, we sort of live in the middle of Rainsville, Sylvania, and so I came back across and made all the kids get in the house, and I asked Angela to come outside on the porch. And I knew it'd have to be coming from that direction because that is what the southwest. And so we're there on the porch. You know, in your mind, you're thinking, hey, you know, this may be happening, but surely won't come here. And so we began to discuss a couple of things. And one was, you know, I just brought it up. Hey, you want to get in the tile? She was like, no. You know, lightning, rain, I'm not doing it. So we stood there a few more moments on the porch, and then all of a sudden the sky began to get dark or a gray color, and then, you know, we couldn't see the twister, we could just see like a big fat wedge, and then all of a sudden I could hear trees popping, snapping. So at that point the porch was right there, and where those pillars were knocked over, and so I said, let's do it. And so I went in and got my 5-year-old daughter Madeline, put her on this shoulder, and she was falling asleep on the couch. And let me back up a minute. It was a wild thing. Benjamin, my second son, he, about an hour or maybe 45 minutes before that, I told him to do something. I can't remember what it was, but he didn't do it. And then I was like, Benjamin, where are you? And then, come to find out, he was on the couch under a blanket. And then I could tell he was a little emotional. I said, son, you know, what's going on? I told you that. He said, Dad, I was praying. You know, that's what he said. I guess because they'd heard about the tornadoes that morning, he said, Dad, I was just praying. And so, anyway, so he was sensitive to, I guess we needed some help, some instruction, and some divine wisdom. And so, anyway, back to the story. I went in, put Madeline on my right shoulder, grabbed my 7-month-old son, Jonah, in my left hand, and then Benjamin, the one was praying an hour earlier or whatever, he was in the restroom, and he was taking a long kind of break. And so, like I said, at that point, we can see it, we can hear it, and so I kept yelling out to him. So I had to take the package I had, and Elijah, he was on the front porch, he's 11, so I run out. I'll probably get somewhere right around in here, and then I believe it was God said, no, go to the back creek, you know, because I was first hollered out, hey, let's go to the front creek. We were just going to go down there, get to the lowest point. I never had a thought of staying in the house, and it's probably obvious why. And so I changed directions, gave new instructions to the family. And then Elijah was hanging out on the porch. I said, come on, son. And later, after it was over with, he did not want to leave the porch until everybody was out of the house. You know, but he came on, and so we went around the house, took a right, and then that pine tree there is a small trail that Elijah cut down about 1.5 years ago. He wanted to make a small trail to the creek. We got a big one back here, but I knew I couldn't make it because at that point it's pretty much close to my property line. And so I was just running down, and he ran down, and I told him to get in the creek. And the water was about that deep on him, but I didn't really know how deep it was at the time. And I guess I considered all of us getting in the creek, but it had been raining. So anyway, so I took Jonah and Madeline and laid them down on the creek bank, and I had on a poncho, and then I just took the poncho. And by the time I'm beginning to kneel down. You know, trees are already, I mean, we're already in the middle of it. You know, trees are flying, snapping all around us. And my wife, she gets there right in the nick of time. Ben finally gets out, gets in front of her, and she didn't know for sure where we were going, so the only way she knew where to go was to watch his head, you know, little curls going down the decline there. And so they got there right in the nick of time, a little bit after me. And so she got on top of Jeremiah, which is about 2.5, and Benjamin, and I never did look up. You know, I just kept my head down, just kept praying. You know, didn't really know what to expect, wasn't what you call scared. You know, I just knew that at that point, that's all the instructions that I had in my mind. Just going to see if I could. I didn't know what the pressure was going to be down on the ground, and I think, hindsight, that's probably why I told Elijah to get in the creek. He's a smaller guy. I didn't know if he could hold down, and so it probably lasted a minute or less, I guess, and it was frightening, I guess, looking back upon it. You know, Jeremiah was crying the whole time, but Jonah, he had the big eyes just looking up at me, and Madeline slept through the whole thing, or she said she did, didn't hear anything, and so at that point, you know, as soon as I could, I felt like I could stand up. I stood up and began to do a head count. And initially, I couldn't find Madeline. And when I turned around, you can see it in the creek. The blanket's still there. The blanket I had her wrapped in somehow was down in a tree in the creek. But me and Angela hadn't communicated because all this had happened fast. She had already accounted for Madeline, but I didn't see her. And so when I turned around and saw her, I said, "Buddy!" You know, I was trying to find her. And Angela, she just lost all reasoning at that point, you know, because she saw the blanket too, you know, and so it didn't take but a moment or two, and she located her again. So I saw her. So then I failed to remember that I told Elijah to get in the creek. So in my heart, man, I was convinced that he didn't fare well because I was Elijah. You know, I was looking at all the trees laying around, and you know, I just unfortunately had thought that he didn't fare well. So I was, you know, wanted to find him first, and so here I am. Yelling out, and Elijah, and I still don't remember him getting my attention or hearing him holler or yell for me, and so he got my attention, and the creek bank's about 10 foot probably, and I looked down, you know, he's like, "There!" You know, and looked up and had big old blue eyes and mud and grass all over him. Fine, man, not a scratch on him. And so, yeah, so at that point, man, it was a new day. You know, I didn't care, you know, God was successful in getting the 7 of us to safety in the eye of the storm, you know, in the midst of the storm. So, man, so I could tell looking up that the house was gone. But Angela, she didn't really think about it until someone said something, and she began to get a little upset. And I said, "Hold on, let me go check things out, guys. Hey, we're all fine." And so I come up, man, and I didn't expect to see the whole neighborhood flattened. You know, I didn't really know how big it was. And so, you know, I was getting my composure and went back down, and then she began to get a little upset. And I said, "Look, hey, you know, grieve if you have to." But I said, "Look, guys, we all can move our limbs. You know, God spared us all, 7 of us, you know. I mean, we'll, you know, we can rebuild, we can, you know, do whatever it takes." And at that point, you know, Elijah, being second in command, comes up and taking out the animals. He's a little upset, couldn't find his favorite dog, but her dairy goat, she had a pallet on it, but she made it. And so, yeah, most of the animals, it's amazing how that most of the animals fared pretty well, except the chickens. And so, at that point, you know, I really couldn't relax, you know, because more tornadoes were coming, had no form of communication. And so, you know, they were sort of, you know, and I just said, "No, look, guys, we got to get in the back of the neighborhood, we got to get out of the neighborhood, and I got to get y'all to safety," you know. And so we make it up to the neighborhood, and all the power lines are down, which I knew the power was off, but who knows what. And so we had to treat all the power lines as if they were alive, and so getting all of us through that, and it was beginning to get dark, and so that was a challenge within itself, but God was faithful to delivering us. And you know, and that's what you know, one of the TV stations interviewed me, and that's what I began to, what I felt like that I need to portray of God is that, you know, it's a relationship thing. I personally believe, as you said, that, you know, that the Holy Spirit will bring things to remembrance. When Jesus was walking with the disciples and said, "Hey, I must go away," so the Comforter, and you know, will come and guide you into all truth, show you things to come. And that, you know, and I guess people would say instincts, but I don't think it was instincts. I think that, you know, because that's what the lady, "Were you scared?" I said, "Look, ma'am, I'm not a hero, but I didn't have time to get scared." You know, it was like, you know, I had to go on what I'd built upon for years upon years. And in fact, Elijah being immediately obedient and jumping in the creek. I mean, I've told him and Ben years ago about different things. We're in the city or whatever. So look, son, you got to understand, I'm taller than you are, smarter than you are right now, faster than you are, you know, and I believe that's a way that the Father protects us if we're in obedient. If we're maybe not always first time obedience, but it's best to be that way. Then if you build that trust relationship upon relationship, then when troubles come, you know, that I personally believe that if God paid the price to deposit His Spirit on the inside of me, and if I build on that on faith, that He's not going to leave me in any darkness. He's going to lead me around pitfalls, in the midst of a tornado, whatever.
Hallelujah.
You know, and so that is, you know, that's the story that I knew to begin with, but it had never been to put to test like that. You know, and so, you know, and I know other people that may not say the same thing survive, you know, different ways. I mean, God is gracious and merciful, and a lot of folks, you know, did fare well, and some folks didn't. And so I just want to give Him the glory for our little story, and you know, and I'm sure the kids will be fine. And I think even it was a bad thing, but I think that God can use it in a mighty way for, if nothing else, just remember the story they hear their dad saying over and over. You know, God's intimate. He lives on the inside of you. He's speaking it all the time. The point is, are you still so you can listen? You know, when times, and not times of trouble, but when trouble comes, then you've exercised your spirit, man, and say, hey, that's information coming over that I need to heed to.
So what did you do when you got on out across?
Well, as I began to go up the hill there, this first house, the owners were not there, but their son, bless his heart, he came here. He was only here 10 minutes, came to feed their dog. They were at the hospital seeing one of their daughters, and him and a buddy was there, and they got in the bathtub, but they were thrown about 100 feet from the house, but they survived. It busted one of their eardrums. But he is a game warden, and but they began to help other people, and the people up on the corner, she was bleeding real bad. She had a 2x4 or something stuck, a part of a 2x4 through her calf, and he put a tourniquet on. They said when she got to the hospital, they had to give her like 5 pints of blood. And so everybody else had broken legs or whatever. And so I mean, I wanted to help folks. I mean, at the point I still felt led to get my family to safety. And so I went on up, and another neighbor, he thought his family was at home. He was actually in a safe place, but he thought they were home, so he actually had to be. He got in within seconds before the tornado hit his house. He got in the closet. But his truck, we got in his truck. It was like smashed in. The windshield was shattered, but still in. And so he was driving initially, but we were trying to make it through the neighborhood, and we actually stopped and got 2x4s and knocked out the side glass everywhere, and put the family in. But then that's when policemen and stuff began to get here and started hauling bodies out. And most of them were alive, and they kept, you know, wanting us to help with that. And Chris's family wasn't there. I said, look, Chris, you don't mind, let me take your truck, your family's to safety, let me get my family to safety, so I can come back, I'll come back. And so then we made it through the neighborhood and drove over power lines, trees, ditches, septic tanks, and so I went about 5 miles north to a friend of mine that had a basement, so we were smoking out in the basement. And I guess what they say, the rest is history. So, would you take us down there to the creek? Why, yeah.
Just a minute before we go down. One question. How many people died up in that development?
What I know for sure is 2.
Okay.
But one of them I found, maybe more, where y'all, that first curve to the right, there's like 8 or 10 vehicles off there. Yeah. You saw they had some tents up there. Did you see that? Those folks, I heard that the dad had to have an amputation. He's in a coma. The mother has diabetes, and whatever injury she has, she's not doing too well. And then 2 of the kids are okay, and the 3-year-old passed away. And I'm not sure which house. There was an older lady that perished in the storm. That's all as far as the fatalities. That's the only ones that I know of at this time. Rumor had it for several days, the lady that I stopped and talked to, that her 2 kids were fine, but she wasn't accounted for. And but then a few days later, there was some family members up there, and they said she was in the hospital. And she was going to wait. So, And I heard yesterday that there's 2 people still missing. I don't know if it's from this neighborhood or somewhere in this area.